Normally, this is where I would look over the case and talk about the cover and the information on the back, maybe even look through the manual, but as is typical for N64 games, the box is long gone. We could call that short-sightedness on the part of people at the time that they didn't bother to keep them since they weren't thinking about collectors 25 years later. But they were cheap, flimsy boxes anyway. They really weren't designed to be kept. So, to avoid having a really long, static shot of this cartridge, I'm not going to say much here, except that I've gathered that the general consensus on this game is largely middling to negative. I have a specific interest in games with lower mixed receptions, so this game has intrigued me for a long time. I'm not particularly expecting to love this, given the tepid consensus, but my primary interest in games being from a production and design standpoint, I don't necessarily have to enjoy a game for it to be interesting. I said Pariah may be one of the more interesting games I've ever played, but the game itself, in terms of just sitting down and playing it, is largely mediocre. But it has enough unorthodoxy from a creative standpoint that it's exceedingly interesting nonetheless. My interest in Quest 64 here is starting predominantly from a similarly clinical perspective, but I may be surprised. As for the cover image, it's a fairly typical, unremarkable example of the era, but keep in mind what the character looks like, because as soon as we cut to gameplay, he's going to look a lot more like a cartoon child than this. I think they aged him up on the cover because nobody wants to play as a small child, which then raises the question, why make the main character a child in the first place? If you have to portray him differently on the cover in an attempt to prevent putting people off, then maybe that was a non-ideal decision. Though it does have the distinction of being one of very few games that gets filed under Q when alphabetizing on a shelf. I can't say I know the name Imagineer from any other game. And right away, that instrument sounds so cheap. Oh man. Keltland, an island where magical spirits abound. This is the abode of magicians who have become powerful through a pact with the spirits. These are apprentices of the Melrode monastery, among them the young apprentice Brian. Which is apparently there. Kenishire. This is the kingdom of northern magic, home to the Melrode monastery. This kingdom is ruled by King Scottfort. Okay. I'm used to text in games taking forever to go away. That was actually fairly short. Carmug? The Kingdom of Merchants is situated in the central region of Keltland, the richest and most beautiful of all the kingdoms. And then to the southwest we have... We spend more time without text than with. Highland, the Kingdom of the Sword, located at the southern edge of the Isles, the Kingdom of Fire and Steel, ruled by the ambitious and warlike King Baegis? Baegis? Okay. Thanks to a treaty among the three kingdoms, the people live in peace and prosperity. And let me guess, it won't last because it never does. One night, however, the monastery fell under an evil spell with the theft of an ancient book. Okay. And that text, for some reason, lasted forever. Because of the theft, Keltland now faces dangers it has never before known. Yeah. Oh, that's it. Okay, I felt like that was leading somewhere. I guess it's leading to the game, but I thought there would be a conclusion there. Anyway, I was going to say the horns there sound very, very synthetic and cheap keyboardy. This game's 1998, and those sounded more like something you would hear in a fairly early Super Nintendo game. So like even in 98, that instrumentation would have felt, I think, kind of dated, even at the time. Because there are some N64 games that have actually pretty good sounding instrumentation. Not amazing, because you're still very limited by the space on the cartridge, how good the samples can be, but those horns particularly sounded cheap. And they're very dry. They needed more like reverb or space on them. Also, the very start of the music, at the whole beginning of this, for some reason made me think of the, the main theme from Back to the Future. It was not actually the same, but maybe like a fragment of the motive was similar that made me think of it, or maybe I'm completely imagining that. So for context, we're 1998. Let's talk years here, because I like putting things in perspective, because I don't know if everybody watching this really keeps that in mind. So 1998, we are a year after Final Fantasy VII. We are the same year as Ocarina of Time, and we're the same year as Metal Gear Solid. Interestingly, we have no options, just new, load, and delete. Hopefully I have space on this controller pack. I am playing this on real hardware. So hopefully my controller pack holds out for this playthrough. I replaced the battery in it a few years ago, so it's not the original 25-year-old battery, 30-year-old battery, which should be fine. They should last like 20. And I should have space on it because I think the only thing on this controller pack is Doom 64, because that game is so fucking good that I pretty much always have saves for that on like all of my controller packs, because I play that game a lot. And amazingly, one of the interesting things about the game is it just hard cuts to gameplay. Like I just hit new game. You don't even pick options like difficulty or settings of any kind. It's just boom, you're here. No establishing shot, no sweeping shot of the building we're in, or like a flyover of the territory we're in. So of course, things like that would really kind of need an FMV, and there's not really room for those on the N64. Although Resident Evil 2 kind of proved that wrong, but Resident Evil 2, the N64 version of that, is an extreme anomaly. For one, it's on the biggest cartridge they ever made, which was 64 megs, which almost no games used because they were very expensive to manufacture. It was also a very late game where compression methods and stuff had advanced a lot. So that game's kind of an anomaly that it has FMVs and shit, but that's one of the things you have to lose doing an RPG on the N64 is fancy FMVs, which all the PS1 RPGs had, because they put a bunch of money into the CG scenes to make them all cinematic and grand, and you can't really do that here. So we have Grand Abbot here. Brian, even though I've begged you not to leave, you still say you must go after your father. Okay, right away, the way this is written is awkward as fuck, because he's just telling the character the information the character just told him. He's like, this is like echo chamber exposition. Why not just have the main character say these things? No matter how wonderful your powers may be, you are still a child. And right there we have another big problem, which is it's not fun to play as a stupid snot-nosed kid in video games. I don't want to be some wimpy-ass little proto-human. I'd rather be like an actual person, not a larva. Your father, Lord Bartholomew, left to search for the stolen Eletale Book that has been missing for a month. No wonder you are worried about him. This exposition is so clunky. He's just telling me things I already know. I mean, I don't, as the audience, but this character does. Contained in the words of the book is a power that exceeds human knowledge. Wait, how does that work? Because if you read the words of the book, then wouldn't you have that knowledge? Thus, it's not exceeding human knowledge? Or is it unreadable in some way? Is it like in a cipher no one knows? In which case, it's not very useful. I wonder who could have possibly stolen it from the crypts of the monastery. If an evil person should use it, the country and all its cities will be destroyed. The spirit's blessings will disappear, and Coutland will once again be visited by a day of grief. Yeah, I kind of like the drop shadow on the text. The text here isn't bad. It's not as blurry as text often looks in N64 games. Blurry being the key word for N64 in general, but this text looks reasonably sharp. It's clearly defined edges. It's got a drop shadow so it pops off the background. Doesn't look bad. Bartholomew's disappearance may mean he is caught in the fighting over the book. If you go, you may find yourself in danger as well. If you still insist, I do because I'm the protagonist, begin by going to Dondoran. Dondoran? I'll ask the king of Dondoran Castle to protect you. Okay, and we're in. And already we have symbols on the lower left that don't mean anything to us, except the HUD went away. The R button brings up, I think, an item list. The C buttons bring up spells. L does nothing. Z makes him shake his head, so I'm guessing that's a use key. As does A. B does nothing. Okay. Hello, sir. When you leave the monastery, it's best to head towards Dondoran from Melrode. I'll ask the king of Dondoran Castle to give you protection. You should stop at the monastery to pay respects. Fuck respects. I respect no one. Doors open automatically, it would seem. Yes, I don't have to press a button. Okay. Pretty smooth animation on him opening the door, but here we are. A sawed-off, snot-nosed little kid. Why the fuck would you do this? I mean, like, surely you want to feel badass playing a game. You want to play like a powerful character that's awesome. I sure as fuck don't want to be this puny little twat. That immediately just puts me off this game quite profusely, as does the camera here. That's spectacular. It's just not fun to be a kid. I want to be, like, cool and awesome. Or at the very least interesting, and children are none of the above. They're just loud, abrasive, useless, and dumb. Hello, person. Gellus. As you get close to a hidden spirit, you will see a sign. When you see it, press the Z button. The mark of 4 spirits will appear. Press one of the C buttons to choose which of the spirits you wish to increase. You will need as much help from each of these spirits as you can get. Use the C buttons like this. The fire spirit is up, water is down, earth left, and wind right. Memorize these positions. I've already forgotten. Good news is the movement is actually pretty responsive. Something you often don't get in games of this era, of course. It's not soupy at all. You change directions very quickly. Like, I can spin in place pretty easily. There isn't like a huge latency. Of course, we do have the inherent problem that because the C buttons are spells, you cannot use the C buttons to turn the camera. So we're kind of at the mercy of the camera doing whatever the hell it wants. Brian, the wooden scepter you carry is the magic spells you acquire throughout your journey are your only means of defending yourself against encounters with the enemy. It's a good thing everyone's absolutely certain I'm going to run into enemies, because then that just makes them seem horribly irresponsible for letting a child go do this, which just further adds to the argument that we should not be a child. And I guess there's nothing in here. Why am I going into all these? I think they're all empty. Yeah, there's nothing here, bro. But I'm gonna go into all of them, because you never know. They all have the exact same book on the side table. I have a feeling they're all literally the same room, just different loading triggers taking us to the same cell in memory. And this takes us, I guess, outdoors. God, I wish I could center the camera. Dewdrop obtained. Presumably a healing item. Hopefully no one cares that we stole it. Spirits are hiding everywhere. Look for them in the town, in the countryside, and every last nook and cranny. You can sometimes find them after battles, too. Be thorough, laddie, and you'll find everything you need. When you find a treasure chest, move in close and a sign will appear. Press the Z button and you will find items that will help you on your quest. Use these items wisely. You might look in the monastery to find what you need to get started. Apparently I'm a rebel because I opened that with the A button and not the Z button. So I guess we have 2 use keys, which means we have a redundant button, which then makes me wonder why the hell the redundant button isn't center camera. Oh, B is center camera. Yeah, so if I just stand here, the camera doesn't move. If I hit B, it starts to rotate behind me, but then it slows down and takes forever to reach it. And finally it's recentered. Look how long that took. Madness. Why would you do that? Another dewdrop. I kind of like the animation of that chest opening. It's very cutesy, elastic, the way the thing floats out. It's very smoothly gelatinous. Again, smoothness is not a thing the N64 tends to do very well. But, oh yeah, R is the item menu. Okay. Dewdrop. MP10. Oh, it's a magic recovery, not a healing item. Okay. Leave now, Brian. In his last letter, Lord Bartholomew said he crossed Loch Kildery on the way to Larapool. Be very cautious. Evil creatures lie in wait beyond these monastery walls. Yeah. Just let the kid go and get killed. Glad no one cares. We have a staggering 4 pews. So despite this absolutely massive room, they weren't expecting very many people to be here. Of course, I can get up here and desecrate the, whatever you call this. We have, plaques of some kind that are fenced off. Maybe they're dangerous and they bite people. I'm not sure. Let's go through here. Clearly that other door is the exit. Oh god, the camera. Yeah, so if I hold B, it sort of makes a very half-assed attempt at centering, but doesn't really do it. Honey bread obtained. That's probably HP. Yeah, HP 100. Ooh, that's a pretty good one. That's double what I even have. Welcome to the kitchen, laddie. Your quest is sure to be a long one. Please take this fresh bread. I made this myself. Interesting, they seem to have much more seating for food than they do in the actual chapel. And annoyingly, you can only open one side of these double doors. It looks like. The left does not open, but if I go to the right, yeah. So if I go to the right, yeah, no, it doesn't. So only one of the 2 double doors is even functional. That's kind of annoying. Alright, well, we have very simple graphics, even for N64 standards. The textures here are extremely basic and blurry. Like Mario 64 basic, and that game was a launch title, so it has a bit of an excuse. Everything's a really flat, simplistic color, presumably because I guess it's appealing to a fairly young audience, but for bizarre reasons, for reasons I don't understand, that always translates into very simplistic color. Oh, what are these bubbles? Ooh, that must be a spirit. Okay, so we have fire, water, earth, and wind. See, this is what I don't know, what to emphasize, because maybe wind sucks, and I'd be much better off putting it into fire. Maybe fire isn't very useful because tons of enemies resist it, and I'd be better going into earth. Or maybe this game's actually really well balanced and they're all equally viable. I genuinely don't know. My inclination here is to go with fire. So this time I'm gonna do that. So we now have 2 fire. That window there has a delightful texture error on it. This horse here is very spindly. Look at those legs, my god. They look like they're gonna snap off. Nay. Well, good for you. Yeah, visually this is very basic. In a way that's sort of cute, but also just kind of underwhelming. There's something to be said for like minimalism or basic, you know, just kind of clean colors, straight lines, but that only gets you so far. I don't think there's anything back here. I just had to check. Because I've been explicitly instructed to check every nook and cranny, because apparently there are those spirits that let me level up scattered everywhere, which means, unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of wandering around like an idiot checking corners. So now I need to check behind where the horse is, because there might be one over here as well. There is not. Okay, well that was a nice waste of time. This is a long-ass walkway. Somebody needs to pull these weeds. Alright. This is the town itself, I suppose. I'm gonna check this corner because I have a feeling there might be something here, because the corner's an obvious spot to put something. I guess not. Although now I have to wonder how far away can I see those bubbles? Is the limit the resolution, or is there a draw distance that's actually very short and I'd have to be really close? Hello, Fisher. Halt, who goes there? Oh, it's you, laddie. Ever since your father went away, we've had to stand guard against the monsters that are surrounding our town. Lord Bartholomew was the spirit tamer, and we will not be safe until his return. Again, seems like information Brian would know, but thanks for telling me anyway. I'm also already tired of being called laddie. Ooh, hey, now we're getting a nice frame rate drop. I was waiting for that. I was actually going to say earlier the game runs pretty smoothly for an N64 game, which is of course a very low bar. N64 games tend to run like absolute dog shit. This one's actually fairly smooth, but inevitably there's some slowdown, because the N64, man, it's just incapable of delivering a stable frame rate. Even when not much on screen is changing, it still inexplicably fluctuates wildly. Never really been clear why, it's just its weird-ass architecture. And don't get me wrong, I love the N64. I find it an infinitely fascinating console for Many reasons, and that's one of them. It's bizarre architecture and its strange performance. Ready to travel, are you? Fine, we'll give you some white wings. They'll bring you back to Melrode any time. It is important that you understand wings will only work in wide open spaces. Take care. Okay, so we have fast travel. Well, that's cool. Presumably when I use that, he'll give me another. What do we have here? Oh, we have a withered old person. My grandchildren have gone out to play despite the dangers that lurk just outside our gates. I worry that the monastery will not be able to protect them much longer. Yeah, especially if they're going outside the gates. It's kind of antithetical to being protected. Also, if you don't like them doing it, just tell them not to. And if they do it anyway and die horribly, well, you can't say you didn't warn them. Ooh, another old person. Look at that geezer. Fantastic. Epic mustache. He looks curmudgeonly as fuck. Oh, he appears to be missing an eye. Just story from long ago, but terrible misfortunes fell upon Keltland because of the Eletale Book. Okay. And people became lazy. Oh no, that's the greatest crime of all. So what exactly does the Eletale Book do? I guess we know it contains knowledge beyond human comprehension or whatever, but apparently it prevented monsters as well, but like how? Does anyone want to unpack the mechanics of that for me? Wow, does your father let you play outside? My mother says the monsters will get me. Aren't you afraid? Don't worry about me. I've got this. Wooden stick. What is this place? It has a house on the sign. I don't really know what to make of that. Oh, it's an inn. Okay. Shannon. Hello, Master Apprentice. Wait, what? What the hell is a Master Apprentice? Isn't that a contradiction? I'm Shannon. I've been traveling hither and yon all over Keltland. I see you're setting out on a quest too. I trust we'll run into each other along the way. Oh, you're gonna be some recurring character that is presumably at every inn? Don't you feel tired, Master Apprentice? Stop calling me Master Apprentice. That makes no sense. Please rest here for the night. We'll take good care of you. We love you long time. Will you stay? Sure. Oh yeah, that's how you save. Okay. Do I have room? Continue save. Yeah? Oh, I thought you meant continue game, not continue the saving process. Are you sure to exit without saving? Yeah, I just did. Can I go check out the rooms? Even though it's kind of a dickish thing to do, just barging into inn rooms. But you never know, there might be... Oh my god, sorry. I didn't mean to walk in on you. I'm glad you weren't doing anything disagreeable. Look at... Is that supposed to be his giant heaving gut? Like hanging over his belt? My god. There are many spirits in Keltland's fields and valleys, probably around town, so only a true spirit tamer knows when the spirits are... Yeah. That's more reinforcement of look for spirits. Nothing here. Okay. Nice rallentando in the music there. Oh, I guess it's night now. Okay, do I have a clock anywhere? Oh, there's status. 4 defense, 6 agility. Apparently I have 9% experience in agility and I have no idea why. Do you start with that or does running around give you agility experience? Environment, message, BGM. Oh, is this like the speed text scrolls out? I guess it's fine where it is. That's not actually changing the volume of the background music at all. Weird. Okay. Holy Plan. Is it supposed to be plain? So we're at Melrode. There's some blue buildings beneath us. Dondoran's all the way there. Connor Fortress in the south. It's not a very specific map. There's our elements. Apparently we can level each one to 50. Oh my god. Yeah, I'm a little worried this game might be horrifically long, but I don't know. Alright, what do we have here? I think this is the one building I haven't checked. And it's empty and looks identical to other ones I've been in. Hello, Grunions. What are you up to? I'm a pirate. Those monsters out there don't scare me. Okay. Can you hold your breath for 10 minutes? I want to be a spirit tamer just like you when I grow up. Well, I'm not grown up, so I don't know what you mean by that. Who's afraid of the big bad Hare? Okay, if a Hare exists, I would be afraid of it. Brian, sometimes you will need to use the B button to adjust your view. Yet very, very, very slowly. I didn't talk to these people, who are still standing here even though it's night. Lately, I've heard that monsters have been seen along the roads. They even say a thief is hiding in the woods. A thief in the woods? Who would have thought? With your father gone, there's no one to tame the evil spirits. We pray Lord Bartholomew can find his way back and save us. Well, did you try banging on his food dish? Your father used to visit us often. He brought prosperity to all of us in Melrode. Well, I'm glad my dad's a cool dude, but apparently he buggered off and left us all to be screwed. Brian, when fighting, you will have 2 octagonal areas surrounding you. The large octagon represents the entire fighting area. The small octagon represents your personal area of movement. Use your area of movement to avoid enemy attacks. If you move outside of the large octagon, you will have the option to escape the fight. And I think I see a flickering over here, which might be bubbles. So that confirms my draw distance question. It doesn't look like they have a limited draw distance. It looks like the limit is the resolution itself, which of course is 240p, but I did see this from fairly far away. Now I just have to sit here and wonder what the hell I do again, because I don't know if there is a wrong answer here. I think what I'm going to do, at least in the early stage here, is I think I'm going to go for well-rounded. So I'm going to do Earth next. I'll just get each one up, you know, a couple points before I start focusing on any particular one. Or I might just continue going for a well-rounded sort of thing. In RPGs, I do tend to go for well-rounded. I'm not much of a min-maxer. That is a fascinating rendering of a sheep. Bah. Yeah, that's pretty much what I expected it to say. I don't know why it looks like they crossed a sheep with a poodle, but let's check the farmer's house, see if I can steal any of his shit. Ooh, I can. Excellent. Also, it's not the farmer's house, it's just like a storage place, I guess. We get fresh bread. So fresh it's been sitting in a chest for God knows how long. It's getting very tedious to try to look any direction because the camera is so slow. I should point out that like right now, I'm holding B continuously in an attempt to get the camera to kind of cooperate, and it gets close to behind me fairly quickly. Like if I do this, it gets most of the way there fairly quickly and then just really screeches to a halt towards the end. So if I hold B while moving, it does a half-decent job of staying with me, but I do wish I could just use the C buttons, you know, to spin it around manually. But I think that's basically all there is to see here, isn't it? I'm gonna say I'm good to leave. Obviously we come back here because we got a fast travel item. Now that we've gotten started, I really want to talk about the music in the game. Compositionally, I don't really have much to say, except that it's largely just a bit dull. It's entirely competent, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's perfectly serviceable for a low-stakes, flagrantly anodyne game like this, but it's also probably not in many people's best game music playlists. The intro fanfare that plays over the backstory is reasonably epic. But the other tracks aren't nearly that grandiose. Part of the problem is that the game itself lacks the weight for the music to involve any elevation, so it's consequently superficial. Although there is one piece in particular much later in the game that I genuinely love. It's the only track in the game I would say I do love, but we'll talk about that one when we get there. For now, the music we've already heard has some things of note. The music inside Melrode Monastery has decent dynamics. It basically crescendos over its entire length, with the loudest point right before it loops. This is not in any way remarkable in itself, since dynamics were a staple feature in music for millennia, since compression didn't exist, but it's always surprising to hear in modern day, since dynamics have all but vanished in relatively recent years. Something I haven't really discussed much on this channel is my vociferous disdain for the extreme compression and high loudness that is just treated as a default nowadays. I actually dislike compression in nearly any context. I think almost everything sounds better with its original, natural dynamic, but I'm clearly in the extreme minority there, so I won't bother boring you by reading my War and Peace-sized manifesto on loudness, but when music I engineer looks like this, and everyone else's music looks like this, I appreciate a good old-fashioned crescendo when I hear it. It's not even a particularly large dynamic in any objective sense, but by modern standards, it's gigantic. Another thing of note in both the monastery music and the music that plays in the town itself is that they have fluctuating tempo. I pointed out the rallentando in the inn music, which happens before it loops, and the town music and the monastery music do this as well, though the monastery music actually speeds up before it slows down. Like dynamics, fluctuating tempo was a staple feature in music for millennia, but is mostly lost in an age of obsessively recording to click tracks and quantizing everything to a grid, and it's especially noteworthy in music that's entirely software, where typically everything would be metered perfectly. But it gives the music some actual expressiveness, which is really nice. An incredibly small detail I quite like is that in the Melrode town music, when it loops after the rallentando, the cymbal crash on downbeat happens slightly early compared to the bass drum. I'm assuming this was a deliberate choice to try to humanize the music, like the guy with the cymbals and the guy on the bass drum weren't totally in sync coming out of the rawl. And if so, that's a legitimately interesting choice. So, between the dynamics, the fluctuating tempo, and that cymbal being early, I feel like the composer made an effort to treat the music as if it were real orchestral music, despite the fact that it's very cheaply rendered. And I respect that effort. But it's the technical side of things I have more to say about, as that's more my domain. I already mentioned the cheap-sounding brass in the opening fanfare, but to be fair, brass horns in particular are apparently hard to synthesize convincingly. You can pick up any old keyboard that doesn't use samples, and the trumpet will always be the worst-sounding setting. For example, here is the Yamaha PSS 570 I keep on my desk just for sketching out melodies or finding intervals and such. I don't actually record this, although it's briefly audible in my Barbie Mystery Cruise playthrough, where I zoom in on the captain's creepy thousand-yard stare. It's from the 80s and wasn't remotely high-end even at the time, so it mostly sounds cheap and tinny, but the instruments that are just blatantly electronic sounding are fine. It definitely sounds old, but it doesn't sound shitty. You could potentially use this for something. But then you check the trumpet setting, and it just sounds like ass. Which is typical of synthetic brass. But even beyond the brass, all the instruments in this game sound quite cheap for 1998. Some of the tracks would sound more appropriate on Super Nintendo several years earlier. Making matters even worse is that it's far too dry. I keep wanting there to be some reverb, but it's all right up front. Obviously, the complexity of the DSP available in real time on an N64 is limited, but it absolutely is possible to do reverb, and you could even just bake it into the samples so that it's not real-time DSP. So it's weird how dry this is, and that only makes it feel even cheaper because it kind of makes it feel unfinished, like the composition is in place but the processing isn't done yet. Lots of games had reverb around this time, and even earlier. Here's a track from Legend of Legaia on PS1, which is the same year as Quest 64 if we're going off of the earlier Japanese release. And there's plenty of reverb, so the instruments sound like they're in some kind of space instead of a direct line out of a cheap keyboard. It sounds dated because it is, but it doesn't sound bad by any means. And it's not that there's literally no reverb whatsoever in Quest 64, as some of the instruments have a bit of space to them, but it's consistently not enough, and the lead melodic instrument is usually bone dry and very direct. The intro fanfare is a notable exception, as the horns have an obvious delay, and the strings have a bit of reverb, and there's a fair amount of layering, so that track feels far more produced and fully realized than pretty much all the other music in the game. But that it does sound more produced makes me wonder if the extreme dryness of the rest of the music was an intentional decision rather than a technical limitation. How much reverb and spatiality you like something to have is a matter of taste, not objective truth. So maybe they just preferred it that way, and they're allowed to feel that way. But to me, it just feels like something is missing. Admittedly, in my own mixing, I tend to use a lot of reverb, so maybe this is just a me problem. But the strangest thing of all about the music is that it's all full of clicks, presumably as the result of the samples not starting at a zero crossing, as the clicks happen almost every time a note changes. Given what music is, this is a problem because notes change a lot. I can't believe this even happened, and it's indescribably annoying and adds to the tremendous overall sense of cheapness the game has. To me, these sound like waveform discontinuity clicks, which are caused when the shape of the wave is interrupted by an edit. If we just look at a spectrogram here, this is a continuous tone at 440 Hz, or concert A. This is an alternating current wave, so the line between the peaks and troughs is zero, and so that's where you want any edits to take place. If I just select a section of this and delete it, you can see a big spike appeared on the spectrogram, and that's a click from a waveform discontinuity. If we then look at the waveform itself, you can see what happened. Before the cut, it was on its way up, but after the cut, it's going down, and this asymmetry causes the click. If I adjusted the cut so that it's going up after the cut, then the shape is correct and you don't get the obvious click. But this is an extremely simple waveform of a single tone. Real recordings are infinitely more complex, so it's not always simple to cut at an actual 0 point, and this is what fades are for. Using either fade in, fade out, or crossfades, you can ease a sound down to 0 and back up smoothly, preventing these waveform discontinuities. And that's what's typically done rather than zooming into the sample level like this, simply because it's faster. It seems that in Quest 64, when the notes change, they just start and end wherever in the waveform they happened to be at the time, which is statistically unlikely to be right on a zero crossing. But of course, we're dealing with very primitive hardware here, and sound running in real time rather than a carefully edited recording, so things are a bit different. But this is not something that's unavoidable. Here's a bit of music from Majora's Mask. There are no discontinuity clicks here, and this is running on the exact same hardware, proving unequivocally that it is possible. I can't speak for precisely why Quest 64's music has this and Majora's Mask's doesn't, since I wasn't present for the creation of either, but I know a discontinuity click when I hear it, and I also know that it's Quest 64 that is the exception here, not Majora's Mask. Here's some Mario 64 music. Which is also the same hardware and also has no clicks on note changes. Hell, here's an NES game from 9 years earlier, and its music doesn't have clicks either. Obviously, this problem of the constant clicks happened for a reason, but I don't know what that reason was. It could be time constraint, laziness, budgetary constraints limiting either time or the quality of the samples. It could even be plain old incompetence. But whatever the reason is, the end result is that it makes the music unpleasant to listen to, and also makes the game feel really flimsy, like it's barely working. Now, generally speaking, I remove clicks from the games I play on this channel. I mentioned clicks out loud in both Alien Resurrection and Disaster Report, and in both of those playthroughs, I removed hundreds upon hundreds of clicks, if not thousands, from the game audio, but I've done it in others as well. Red Faction also had clicks now and then, and I had to repair a lot of clipping in that game since the output was too hot, which I also had to do with Seek and Destroy. It's a thing you might not know I do, since the fact that it's been removed means you can't notice, it's just gone. But I constantly remove clicks from games, and I spend a lot of time removing spit clicks from my VO, because that shit is annoying. Typically, these clicks are infrequent enough that I just round-trip that spot to RX to paint them out as I come across each one while mixing, but this game has far too many for that. Since they happen on almost every single note change, removing them manually would take the rest of my fucking life, so I'm gonna have to resort to an automated process, which, being automated, is inherently imperfect. It will remove the bulk of them, but the occasional one will still sneak through, which I will then try to remove manually. So, you may still hear some clicks throughout this playthrough, but understand that without intervention, you'd be hearing a hell of a lot more. This music is incredibly jaunty. Has a nice 12/8 sort of bounce to it. Okay, already we have a random encounter. There's our 2 octagons. Big one, I guess, is escape. This is how far I can move. Yeah. So I guess I now use the C buttons. That's rock, fireball. Let's use fireball. Oh, I don't even pick a target. Oh, these are the werehares. Oh, when he said werehare, I thought he meant like some kind of more specific mythological entity. I didn't realize he meant it was just a common thing that's around here in groups. Okay. Also, explain werehare. Usually, like werewolf. Were, I believe in that context, means man. That's kind of nice. Seamless transition back to the overworld. But anyway, were, I believe, in werewolf means man, because it's like man-wolf. It's a man who turns into a wolf. So, are these werehares people? Did I just kill 3 people, or did the developers misuse the word were, and they are just evil rabbits, and they don't transform? I don't know. But I do like the transition to gameplay there is seamless. We don't, like, teleport to a separate arena. Oh my god. Apparently the encounters are very common. Oh, my MP recovered. Does it recover every fight? But yeah, a lot of RPGs with random encounters, you sort of teleport to a separate arena, like Final Fantasy. You get like a screen effect, and it cuts to a completely different thing. You get your victory fanfare, and then it cuts back. But here, we just seamlessly return to gameplay, and it all takes place in the same location. That's kind of cool. So I guess I'll do water next. I guess that was just a regular level up. Well, then now I don't have full MP. Why did I enter that second fight with full MP? Does it recharge as I run around? Oh, it must. Okay. I'm just wandering at this point. Ew, these are gross. Hellhound. Oh, that... Okay, they don't... I was afraid they were going to be way more powerful. 3 damage isn't bad, though. Oh, that doesn't reach. Okay. Well, now I know water's a bit underwhelming. Am I close enough now? I'm like right up this one's ass. And it still didn't reach. Okay. So... With him actually inside my octagon, can I now hit it? Yes. Ooh, it does good damage. Oh, okay, elements here, 80%. I guess that's progress to next level, which is, I guess, different experience than MP, because our MP is at 30% experience, the elements are at 80%, defense and agility, 60%. Yeah, we're leveling relatively quickly early on, but that's obviously pretty typical. Man, this music is amazingly cheerful. And the color palette is amazingly simplistic. Just huge swaths of just flat, pure primary green. Bumbershoot. Okay. Oh no, I can't move. Oh, but I can attack. But I'm not facing him. Will it hit? Oh, and we changed turns. Okay, I'll try Wind Cutter. Does this home in? No, it just missed. Oh, it tried to home in, though. Try it again. 1. That's not very good. Is he gonna kill me? I should probably have some bread, then. Isn't a Bumbershoot an umbrella? This thing doesn't take too much damage from... Oh yeah, it seems to take more damage from physical. Okay, fair enough. And we can level up. I'll do wind for no particular reason. Okay, you have some fire. It does look like there's a decent amount of auto-aim. I don't have to be facing them perfectly. I thought I did at first, but... And, let's try rock. Yeah, I'm just gonna hit this thing. Physical seems to be the way to go. Oh, wow, yeah. I have noticed there is no strength stat, so I wonder if physical attacks ever get better, or if they just get progressively shittier as my magic gets proportionally more powerful. Already, though, I am sick of how frequent these encounters are. Get like 5 steps before we encounter something. That's gonna get old fast. Ooh, that actually hit. Nice. Wonderful. And we've already leveled up again. I guess I'll do fire. I'll go around again. Is there anything here? Okay, so I can't get down there. There is an invisible wall. Oh my god, there's so much combat in this. Yeah. I guess it's inevitable that... Oh, okay, I thought that just flew right past it. It just went to the far left. Looks like wind doesn't do much to them because it's what they do. That makes sense. Oh, for fuck's sake. I guess every RPG has to have a miss mechanic, but it always drives me crazy. Like, do we really need that? It really is just dead air. It's one thing with a tabletop RPG, where you're rolling dice. It's another thing entirely when there's a visual element. Because then you have the oddity of, like right there. I visually, clear as day, saw my fireball hit that enemy. And then the game just arbitrarily tells me, oh no, it didn't actually hit it. Yeah, that's a thing that doesn't translate from pen and paper to, you know, cinema. And it's just annoying because ultimately it's a waste of time. Ooh, hey, there is bubbles over here. Okay. Let's do Earth. I'll just go counterclockwise again. Oh my god, what is this? Holy shit. Well, it appears to be approximately 45% mouth. What is it? Big mouth. Oh, okay. Well, I guess what else would you call that? Let's try rock. Does that do any better? Nah, it's about the same. Is there a reason to pick any spell over any other? Okay, well it does water damage, so presumably water will do very little to it. Although physical did quite a bit. Well, so far physical is actually more effective than I expected it to be. Okay, so if you're water, you would think fire would do more damage, but the fire does 7 and rock did like 8, so, you know, accounting for randomness, that's pretty much the same, right? Rock will do, yeah, 7. So it doesn't seem to be weak to fire because it's water. Ow. Yeah, I mean... Okay, I can level up again already. The thing that's really... Look, we have an animation for when we're low health. It's actually pretty smooth. The hair movement on it. Cape movement, yeah. I have to say, the animation is actually surprisingly smooth. It's very cartoonish, of course, but it's legitimately not bad for the era. The textures kind of are. Like, even for 98, even for an N64 game, these textures are pretty weak. Ooh, hey. Oh, these really are everywhere. Although I guess it makes sense if each one of these elements can go to 50. Hello there. Travelers don't show up here very often. It seems that it isn't safe anywhere on the roads these days. I see a future for you fraught with danger and challenges that no ordinary human could meet, even though we're just a spindly-ass little child. It isn't clear, but your destiny awaits you at the end of the longest road. Okay, well, that was about as useful as an actual medium, or seer, or whatever the hell you want to call her. That was completely worthless. Nothing back here? No. Be kind of odd if there was a spirit inside and a spirit right behind the hut, but I don't know, at this point I wouldn't be surprised. They're clearly everywhere. Yeah, so far the combat here is, like, remarkably simplistic, which could mean one of two things. Either it's just because this is the beginning of the game. Yeah, look at that water. Man. Even for 98, that water looks terrible. It's not moving at all. There's no ripple to it. Underwhelming graphics, I think, is what I would call this. I'm actually going to head back to Melrode because I have low health. And I don't want to use my other bread because if I go back into the monastery and talk to that cook, Pat, I believe, I think I can get another fresh bread and save that one I found in the chest. And then presumably I can go back to the person that gave me the wings and get another set of wings because, yeah, that did consume them. Although if I... Oh, that's right, it takes forever to get back here. Oh, if I can just get another set of wings indefinitely, then that does make me wonder why it would even be a consumable item. Why not just, you know, he gives me the wings and I can use them forever. Like, it's just an item I have that takes me back here. Because if I can always get another set anyway, there's really no reason to make me replenish it. That's kind of just pointless busy work. But anyway, as I was saying with the combat, it seems really simple so far, but that could be either that it's the beginning of the game, and the combat in RPGs tends to be extremely simplistic early on. I mean, you could say that about, like, FF7. Like, the first few bits of combat in that game are... You just press the attack button a few times. There's really not much to it. It's only as the game goes on... The bread is gone, come back for more. Oh, really? If I have any in my inventory, I guess. But, like, in FF7, it's only as the game goes on that, you gain more abilities and you gain more spells and you get more party members and you get materia you can mix and match. That's when you start getting more stuff to do in combat, and the combat becomes more complex and involving. But early on, you basically just press X a lot. So that could be what's happening here, and it'll get more interesting later. Or it's possible this is just an extremely simple RPG, and as far as I'm aware it is. Like I said, the general consensus I've picked up on about this game is that it is kind of strippy and simple. It's clearly aimed at a fairly young audience, which itself is odd. I'll come back to that, I guess. But if it is very simple, it's possible the combat in this game is just not very interesting, which would be a bit of a shame. And I think it was this one I got the wings from, correct? Yes, you. Give me wings. I'll give you some white wings. Yeah, so I guess I can just always get more. Why not just make it a permanent item then? Anyway, I'll go to the inn to replenish health and save, I guess. But it's weird you would do a simple RPG aimed at a young audience for a couple reasons. The first... Okay, that does heal me. Good. The first is that one of the things that makes this game interesting to me, but also makes it odd that you'd do a simple one, is that RPGs are extremely rare on the N64. This is kind of one of the odd things of this era, is that the PS1, its contemporary, is absolutely packed to the bitch with RPGs. There's so many RPGs on the PS1, it's absolutely mind-numbing. It was just a very popular genre at the time, and the PS1 did it very well. So there's tons of RPGs on the PS1. So if you were a huge RPG fan at the time, the N64 wasn't terribly appealing because it has very little to offer you in that regard. I guess I probably shouldn't be using fire on these. Yeah, looks like... Because they do fire, they're slightly resistant. So there's a minor resistance element, but there doesn't seem to be a weakness. So, like, water should do a ton to this. I guess it kind of did. But that could have just been randomization. The rocks did like 9, water could do 11. I don't know, they were clearly resistant to fire. But anyway, the N64 had very little to offer to RPG fans, and so they all just went to the PS1, which then meant that's a self-perpetuating problem, because if tons of RPG fans are going to the PS1 because the PS1 has more RPGs, that problem isn't going to fix itself, because then any developers wanting to make an RPG are not going to make one for the N64 because they know the audience for that is very limited on the N64, because the audience for that all owns PlayStations, because that's where the RPGs are. And so the incentive then becomes for... Oh, I guess that doesn't reach that far. The incentive then becomes for developers to put their game on the system that sells the most of that genre, and for RPGs, that was undeniably the PlayStation. And so if I was a developer and I wanted to build an RPG, I'm not going to do it for the N64 because I'm unlikely to sell very many. And obviously I need to sell a lot to pay it back, because making games is very expensive. Even in the late 90s, the mid 90s, it still cost lots of money to make a game. So it's curious. Oh, hey, you can hit more than one with rock. That's cool. Excellent. Double kill. So it's curious, a game like this comes along and it's an RPG on the N64, which is very rare. But you're not going to sway all the RPG fans that are on the PS1 and aren't taking the N64 very seriously in that regard, or for that genre. You're not going to sway them or win them over by doing a very simple RPG, which by all accounts this seems to be. So why wouldn't you try to make something more to appeal to those people? Or maybe you just resign to the fact that the serious RPG fans aren't here anyway, so maybe you could just go for a different market entirely, which is a younger audience, and do a more streamlined sort of RPG. I don't know, the whole motivation for doing an RPG on the N64 in the first place and then making it a simple one is strange to me. But beyond that, as I said, I would come back to the aiming at a young audience thing. That in itself is weird to me for the simple reason that you don't really need to aim at a young audience, because there's really no reason a young audience couldn't, play something like Final Fantasy or Chrono Cross or Legend of Dragoon or any of the other countless RPGs on the PS1. It's not like a younger audience would need something like this, because a lot of people did play Final Fantasy games when they were very young. I've seen countless comments from people saying that, they played like Final Fantasy VII when they were really young, like they could barely read young, and they grew up with it. And there's really no reason a young kid couldn't play something like FF7. It's not super violent. It's not like horribly scary nightmare fuel. It's not loaded with like titties and swearing. The swearing is of course censored. I mean, Barrett swears a lot, but it's all Qbert censored where it's random characters. So it's pretty unoffensive. I wouldn't go so far as to call it anodyne, but actually, I accidentally skipped a turn there. Oops. But there's nothing terribly objectionable in something like FF7, so it's not like that was completely locked off to a younger audience. So it seems a fool's errand to me to try to aim younger than that, because something like Final Fantasy is very effective in that it can appeal to both a young and older audience simultaneously, It satisfies both, whereas something much simpler and strippier and bright primary colors really does only satisfy one of those groups. And even then, that's in theory, because I contest that notion. Because what I can certainly say is that when I was young, when I was a little kid, I had no taste for stuff that was for little kids. Wind cutter, didn't really work. I didn't really like stuff that was kind of explicitly for a younger audience. Didn't appeal to me all that much. I was much more interested in stuff that felt more adult. Because of course when you are a kid, you're always looking forward to being an adult. I realize I'm about to die, but I'm gonna push it. Because I don't want to waste my healing items. I don't know how rare they are. If I get really bad, I'll use the wings, but I want to at least get to this building here. Because when you're a kid, you're always wanting to be older than you are, for the most part. That's why, like, young kids, when they tell you their age, they always add the "and a half," because that extra half, like, I'm not 6, I'm 6.5, because that extra half a year makes you that much more badass. When you have kids that are kind of looking forward to being older, that want to be older and want to have access to the things that older kids, that the big kids can do, This whole notion of having shows and movies and games where, like, the main character, oh, hey, there's a spirit here, where, like, the main character is a little kid. Like, the idea here is that it appeals to little kids, but little kids are more interested in what older kids and adults are into. And so I've always found it very kind of counterintuitive to think that the main character in kids stuff should be a child. Like, oh, it's more relatable for them. Yeah, but they're not interested in relatable. They're interested in, like, cool characters. And kids aren't cool. Basically, what I'm trying to do here is defuse the argument that everything is excusable because, well, it's for kids. What did you expect? Because for whatever reason, that's always the first excuse people reach for with this sort of thing, even though it is not, never has been, and never will be a legitimate excuse. Children don't need to be talked down to. They can, in fact, handle more complexity and nuance. Even if they can't grasp the entirety of a more complex thing, they should be challenged by something more intellectually stimulating rather than simply spoon-fed patronizing slop. And even if some of it flies over their heads, that doesn't mean the parts they do get can't leave an impact, and ultimately, that's the point of art. And because kids generally want to be older than they are, or feel more mature than they are, more like an adult, giving them something less patronizing is a great way to do that. I'm not saying it has to be explicit or fucked up, but it's not like nothing exists between Barney and Quake 4. Majora's Mask is perfectly digestible by even a young kid, yet has actual depth, real artistic merit, careful design choices, and meaningful consideration for its elements, and as such is more than capable of being compelling to an older audience. One of the game's most prevalent visual motifs is an almost omnipresence of anguished faces, which is surprisingly dark compared to how aggressively anodyne Nintendo became later on. And that's something that doesn't render the game too twisted for children, but it gives it a little more tonal depth than Quest 64's brusque exuberance and flat primary colors. One may try to argue that my own complaining about the main character being a child and bitching that children are lame and uninteresting and useless contradicts my argument that they are capable of handling more nuance, but it actually only strengthens my argument that one of my defining personality traits is my cartoonishly over-the-top despisation of children, yet even I am arguing they deserve better than half the slop that's plopped in their trough, is a testament to just how shallow much of the stuff that's made for kids actually is. Farther along this road is Dondoran, and the Connacht Forest. Don't get careless in the woods. A robber is about. Hey bro, could I have a quick kip on your bed here? I'm about to die. I guess not. Alright. Ooh. Oh, are you allowed to dodge? I actually moved while that effect was happening. Oh, there we go. Escape. Okay. Let me look around a bit. I don't see any spirits in these corners. You know what? I actually am just gonna go back to town. I'm gonna save my healing items. Maybe these healing items are super prevalent and I shouldn't be this stingy about them, but I'm gonna save them for now. And the trip back there will just give me a little more grinding anyway. And we're progressing pretty quickly at this point, so I guess that's not a bad thing. Punch him. Die. Wow, 18. Yeah, physicals. Why does physical do so much damage? That's very odd. That seems kind of counterintuitive, because we're a mage? Anyway, on the topic of RPGs for the N64, I'm trying to think of other ones that I'm aware of. I'm not aware of all of them, but I'm relatively aware of the N64's library because I'm a huge N64 fan, which I guess you may not know because I I don't think I've actually talked about the N64 much on this channel. I've mostly been doing Xbox and PS2. I've always loved the N64. I find it a very fascinating console because so many of the games are very transitional in that it was the early days of 3D. We were in that kind of transition from 2D to 3D, and everyone was trying to figure it out. It was a new frontier, and I love seeing the kinds of decisions and designs done in that sort of transitional era. But the N64 is actually fairly powerful, realistically, from a rendering perspective, but it ended up being very limited by, one, its very strange architecture. From what I've read, obviously I've never programmed for it because I'm not a programmer, but when I've read interviews with people who worked on it, they don't speak highly of the hardware. Like, it was clearly difficult to work with. So you have it's difficult to program for, you have very little storage space, manufacturing the cartridges is very expensive, so even from just a purely business perspective, it has severe limitations. It's just a bizarre anomaly in a number of regards, and I think that makes it very interesting, especially in hindsight. But in terms of RPGs, it is obviously very limited. There aren't very many. There's this one, of course. A really good, obvious one would be Paper Mario. That game is superb. The combat's more engaging because there's actual interactive elements to it where you don't just click attack. You can actually, there's timing things where you can make your attack do more damage, or you can time a defense to reduce the amount of incoming damage. There's a little more going on than a typical turn-based RPG. And particularly, the writing in Paper Mario is just phenomenally good. Yeah, I will use the bread. And so Paper Mario absolutely holds up as an RPG on the N64, something the system has very little of, but that's a damn good one. And can appeal to a wider audience than just young children, because it's extremely well made. But then the only other one I can think of is, I'm gonna have to think of the name. I think it's called Aidyn, the First Mage. Ardyn, the First Mage. Actually, I have it on my shelf. I'm gonna go double check, because I don't think that's right. I was close. It's not Aidyn, the First Mage. It's Aidyn, Aidyn. Aidyn is that character in FF15 who feels like he's from a completely different game, because FF15 in general just feels like 5 or 6 completely unrelated scripts got Frankenstein together. But it's Aidyn Chronicles, the First Mage. I own that game. I just went over and looked at it on my shelf. I've never played it. So I have no clue if it's like an amazing RPG that I've totally missed, or if it's like a stiff, clunky nightmare that no one would bother playing. I don't know. But that's like the only ones I can think of. One of these days I really should sit down and play Aidyn Chronicles. Again, simply because it's just an anomaly in that it's an RPG on the N64. It doesn't look like there's spirits in the corners. That's what I was looking for. Let's just go into Dondoran.